If you want to read a beautiful, heartbreaking novel that makes you question absolutely everything in your life, every choice that you have made, read Revolutionary Road. It's incredible. The Wheelers were once these bright young people who had their whole lives ahead of them, and they didn't want to conform to this American dream that had kind of been taking over in the 1950s. The great tragedy of this novel is that they have kind of settled for second best, and they are now living this suburban life, which is not the life that they wanted. And April and Frank are just stuck in this suburban life. Until April has a revolutionary idea on Revolutionary Road, and it's to go to Paris and to do all the things that they said they were going to do. And in fact, for April, it's actually more about making Frank do what he wants to do. And I think the characters are really interesting in this novel, and I connected very, very greatly to April throughout the whole thing. I think because her kind of idealistic and wanting more out of life is very much connected to how I am. Even at this age, I'm constantly thinking, oh, I haven't achieved anything yet, I want to achieve this, but I might not be able to achieve it. And I think that's, some people they think about that a lot, and I am one of those people, and I think that April certainly is as well. But April's kind of, drive to make Frank do what he wants to do, it's very much, think about this novel, it's actually about Frank's masculinity. And if you read the novel, the whole kind of crisis that happens and Frank's reaction to it, I think is greatly because of his almost a masculinity crisis that he feels like he's having. But also, it's not just about this whole kind of ambition that they haven't fulfilled their lives to the extent they wanted to. It's about the failing of a marriage, or not, when love just isn't enough. They were married, Frank and April, based on, I think, ideals, based on the image of each other, and just kind of very surface level of just being in love, or loving certain aspects, or the image presented by that person of themselves to you. Frank's a good talker, April was very beautiful, but now there isn't much left, and everything that is left is just turned into resentment, and into hatred, and almost very destructive love, which made it almost painful to read at some moments, because there'd be moments of hope, and then it would just be torn apart, and you would feel that your heart, along with theirs, was just being completely savaged. It was just wonderful, really moving, and extremely powerful. But Yates is a really, really great writer. I mean, he could write just perfectly, just brilliantly. His use of kind of subtle imagery was just beautiful. The most memorable one for me was that Frank is building a path, and this path continues, I think you see the path at the end of the novel, so obviously leading that kind of the cycle, or the circle of the novel, or something like that. But at the very beginning, Frank is building this path out from his house onto Revolutionary Road, and it's as if they're trying to get out of this little hopeless emptiness that they're living in. But when Frank's building it, one of his children puts their foot onto the path as if to stop, and it was just, for me, just summed up almost, the novel in that little bit. That might not make any sense, but it did to me. Also, this novel has some of the greatest dialogue I have ever read in my life. I was saying it out loud, I could hear them screaming, shouting, being passionate. I could feel the characters through their voices. It was fantastic, the best dialogue. I haven't read such powerful dialogue, and very much like a play, that, really powerful dialogue, that it could stand alone, that you could probably take away the description and you would get a perfect picture of this couple. And the other characters, in fact, are brilliant. Yates doesn't have any spare characters. You know, they are all relevant and they all have the individual stories that both contribute to the failing almost of this capitalist ideal, this dream. You know, and they're just fantastic, and I love this book so much. I think, one, because the story, I mean, I like stories like this anyway. If you have read this, you might like The Hours, because there is a bit with a housewife called Laura who's going through a similar kind of state of mind, I guess, at this point. But I mean, I connected to it because I feel the way sometimes April does, even at my age. That's just how my mind works, I think, which isn't a good thing. I mean, April can be very cold and harsh, but she was just such an honest character. Everything she said, everything she did, you knew it was honest and you knew it was true. And I think maybe that's the difference with Frank, and some people don't really get on with Frank because, you know, he's vain and a bit fake, and you know, it's about his masculinity. But I mean, the characters were so carefully kind of constructed and just perfect. I think as a reader you are completely helpless in this novel, and you can see it being played out like in front of you, and you just can't stop it, and you almost want to get involved and say leave, or shout at the characters and wake them up to a certain extent, but you're just so helpless and you are just sitting there watching all of this happen. A Revolution Road, I think, was published in 1961 in the United States. I would have loved to have maybe seen what the reaction was. I mean, if there were any housewives or men who just worked in tiny offices, then if they read this novel, I'm sure they would have seen quite a lot of themselves in it. And it must have been really almost a revolutionary kind of book, because it was kind of saying, you know, this American dream that you have been led to believe is false and fake, which is why Revolution Road is so greatly linked to The Great Gatsby. Also, Richard Yates' writing style is very kind of clear, like Fitzgerald, but you know, The Great Gatsby kind of tears down that American dream that, you know, money and successes will make you happy. And Revolution Road is exactly the same, with the idea that, you know, the perfect house, the perfect life, isn't having a little wife at home playing house and a man going to work in a job that he just hates, sitting in a tiny little office cubicle and just doing nothing and not getting anywhere in life. And it would have been really amazing to kind of see that reaction. But what's interesting, it's actually published in 1989, I think, in England, and I think people who read it then in England would have looked at it very differently, because obviously the 80s were the Thatcherite era, when it's all about kind of self-interest, and maybe almost the re-emerging of some kind of capitalist dream to kind of do that. So it would have been interesting. Enjoyed it so much. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, and it is now one of my favourite books of all time. So I really, really do suggest that you read it, because I think you'll enjoy it. I really do. I wasn't expecting actually to enjoy it this much. It's just fantastic.